The howling wind cut across the jagged blue ice fields of Glacier 9 like a living thing, hungry and searching. Permanent overcast skies hung low, a perpetual twilight that never brightened to true day, nor deepened to honest night. In this half-light stood Aaron Mallory, the only human among the shivering cadets awaiting deployment. "Final equipment check," announced Commander Vorik, his reptilian scales fluttering against the thermal lining of his instructor's exosuit. The commander's nictitating membranes blinked sideways across his eyes as he surveyed the assembly of 12 cadets from across the Orion sector. Aaron watched as each alien cadet activated diagnostic panels on their tech suits, chromatic displays flashing green and blue confirmation patterns across chest plates and helmet visors. Thermal generators hummed to life around him, the sound almost drowned by the perpetual keening of Glacier 9's magnetic winds. "Mallory," Commander Vorik's voice carried a note of exasperation. "Where is your standard-issue cold-weather exosuit?" Aaron straightened, chin lifting slightly. "Respectfully, Commander, I've opted to complete this exercise without technological assistance." A ripple of reactions moved through the assembled cadets, mandibles clicking in amusement, tentacles coiling tighter in disbelief, crystalline structures vibrating in what might have been laughter. "Impossible!" hissed Zeal, a mantis-like cadet whose segmented limbs were already encased in the latest Andromeda-class thermal protection. "Human physiology cannot withstand Glacier 9 for more than 6 hours unassisted." Commander Vorik's expression remained unreadable, but his voice carried a certain weariness. "Academy regulations permit alternative survival strategies. Cadet Zeal, provided the objective is met." He turned back to Aaron. "The objective remains unchanged. 36 hours of independent survival until extraction. No emergency beacons except in case of life-threatening situations." Aaron nodded, adjusting the simple insulated pack on his shoulders. It contained only basic supplies: a knife, water purification tablets, emergency rations, and several lengths of cord. No powered tools, no thermal generators, no communication devices beyond the mandatory emergency beacon. The rear hatch of the transport craft lowered with a mechanical groan, revealing the vast expanse of ice and wind that was Glacier 9's notorious storm zone. Temperature readouts on the cadets' visors immediately dropped to display -48 degrees. "Disperse and survive," Commander Vorik announced flatly. "Extraction at coordinate point Alpha in 36 standard hours." The alien cadets activated various mobility enhancements, hover plates, grip augmentation, balance stabilizers, and stepped into the howling white void with technological confidence. Aaron watched them fan out across the immediate area, most selecting the obvious shelter locations: an ice ridge to the south, several rock formations to the east. Aaron breathed deeply, measuring the sharp pain as the frigid air filled his lungs. He deliberately turned away from the clusters of his classmates and began trudging northwest, toward a distant ridge barely visible through the swirling snow. No HUD guided his steps. No heater warmed his core, just breath, muscle, and will. Behind him, Commander Vorik watched with an unreadable expression before sealing the transport hatch. The craft hummed briefly before lifting away, leaving the cadets to their training exercise. Aaron moved with careful, measured steps. In training simulations back at the academy, he had learned to count his breaths rather than his steps. 30 breaths equaled roughly 200 meters in this gravity. The trick was maintaining a steady rhythm, despite the burning cold in his lungs. After 20 minutes of walking, he paused to survey the landscape. The alien cadets were no longer visible through the thickening snow, but he could make out the dim glow of their thermal domes being deployed in various locations. They would huddle in technology's embrace, monitoring atmospheric conditions through their suits, while automated systems maintained their body temperatures. Aaron had a different plan. He carefully assessed the landscape, noting how the wind had sculpted the snow into deep, compact drifts against a natural ice wall. That would be his shelter location. Not the most obvious choice, but one with natural insulation potential. He needed to work quickly, as the deepening twilight and dropping temperature would soon make construction impossible. His fingers were already stiffening as he began cutting blocks from the compacted snowbank, using his knife to shape each piece with careful precision. This wasn't the first time Aaron had built an emergency snow shelter, though the bitter cold of Glacier 9 made each movement more difficult than any training exercise. He arranged the blocks in a spiral pattern, gradually building upward to form a dome. The first signs of the approaching magnetic storm revealed themselves as Aaron was placing the final blocks on his igloo. A static charge made the hair on his arms stand up beneath his insulated clothing, and a metallic taste filled his mouth. Academy briefings had mentioned the possibility of magnetic disruptions, but had assured them that all standard equipment was shielded against such interference. Aaron worked faster, sealing the gaps between snow blocks with loose snow packed firmly by gloved hands. He left a small entrance tunnel, crawling inside just as the first violent electromagnetic pulse rippled across the training zone. Inside his simple snow dome, Aaron was insulated from the wind, though the temperature remained well below freezing. He cleared a small depression in the center and began preparing a platform for a fire. From his pack, he retrieved a carefully wrapped package containing dry lichen and moss he had collected during the transport's brief landing. Now, he needed a way to ignite it. Aaron selected a particularly clear piece of ice from the igloo wall and began carefully shaping it with his knife, polishing it against his sleeve until it formed a crude lens. Glacier 9's weak sunlight barely penetrated the overcast sky and swirling snow. But Aaron positioned himself to catch what little illumination filtered through a small ventilation hole he had created at the top of his shelter. With painstaking precision, he angled the ice lens to focus the faint light onto his tinder bundle. Minutes passed as he held the lens steady, arms aching, until finally a thin wisp of smoke rose from the moss. Aaron bent close, blowing gently until the first spark caught and a tiny flame flickered to life. The magnetic storm struck in full force, just as Aaron coaxed his small fire to a sustainable burn. Outside his igloo, the air seemed to scream as electromagnetic disturbances tore through the atmosphere. Inside, Aaron felt only a slight tingling across his skin as he carefully fed his precious fire. Across the training zone, the magnetic storm wrought havoc on the alien cadets' technological shelters. Hover stakes lost power and collapsed. Thermal domes flickered and failed, and exosuit systems reported cascading errors as the electromagnetic interference overwhelmed their shielding. Cadet Lurax, a crystalline being from the Silicon Worlds, was the first to experience catastrophic equipment failure. Without the carefully regulated heat of his exosuit, the extreme cold began to cause microfractures across his crystalline body. Panic flared as his mobility systems failed, leaving him immobile in the howling storm. Nearby, Cargu, a methane breather whose natural environment was warm gas giants, found her atmospheric processor stuttering as the magnetic interference disrupted its filtration cycles. Her 4 eyes widened in genuine fear as emergency alarms within her helmet signaled impending system collapse. One by one, the technological wonders that were supposed to protect the alien cadets betrayed them, leaving them vulnerable to Glacier 9's merciless environment. The training exercise had transformed into a genuine survival scenario. Aaron was startled from his fire tending by a desperate scratching at the entrance to his igloo. He crawled to the opening and found Zeal, the mantis-like cadet who had mocked him earlier. Zeal's exosuit was dark, its displays dead, and the alien's mandibles clicked rapidly in what Aaron recognized as a sign of extreme distress. Without hesitation, Aaron widened the entrance and helped drag the alien inside. Zeal's exosuit, now nothing more than dead weight, made movement awkward in the confined space. Magnetic storm. 2 hours early. Systems failure across all units. Zeal managed, limbs trembling uncontrollably. Others scattered, failing. Aaron nodded grimly. We need to help them. Can you get out of that suit? It's just dead weight now. Zeal hesitated, mandibles working nervously. Without thermal regulation, my body will begin to shut down. The fire will help, Aaron said, pointing to the small but steady flame. And body heat. We insulate naturally better than you might think. While Zeal struggled with the manual release catches of the now useless exosuit, Aaron crawled back outside into the storm. The magnetic disruption had intensified, creating eerie auroras that danced across the ice fields in unnatural patterns. Through the whiteout conditions, he could just make out the dim shape of another cadet stumbling through the snow, clearly disoriented. Aaron called out, waving his arms to create a visible target. The cadet, Karg, he realized as she drew closer, staggered toward him, her atmospheric processor making alarming wheezing sounds. Inside, Aaron shouted over the wind, grabbing her arm and guiding her toward the igloo entrance. Your processor's failing. We need to get you to shelter. One by one, Aaron ventured out into the storm, locating and rescuing his fellow cadets. Some he found by following their distress signals, others by systematically quartering the area around his shelter. With each rescue, the igloo became more crowded, but also warmer as body heat began to supplement the small fire. By the time Aaron found Commander Vorik, nearly 6 hours had passed since the storm began. The reptilian instructor was partially buried in snow, his exosuit's power cells completely drained, scales beginning to stiffen from the cold. Aaron had to drag him the final distance to the igloo, now expanded to accommodate the growing number of refugees. Inside the snow shelter, a remarkable transformation had taken place. The alien cadets, stripped of their technological advantages, had organized themselves around the fire. Some had discovered that the local ice contained fibrous algae that, when dried near the flame, provided excellent insulation. Others had learned to bank the fire with slow-burning ice moss that Aaron had shown them how to harvest. Commander Vorik regained consciousness slowly, his reptilian metabolism struggling to warm despite the fire and insulation. When his eyes finally opened, he surveyed the scene with obvious disbelief. The exercise, he began, voice raspy, has become a genuine survival situation. Commander, Aaron completed for him. The magnetic storm disabled all powered equipment. We've gathered everyone we could find. Vorik's gaze moved around the cramped space, taking in the 11 cadets, all that remained of his training group, huddled together around the fire. Academy projections indicated only a 17% chance of storm activity during our deployment window. Nature doesn't follow projections. Sir, Aaron replied without rancor. We've organized gathering parties to collect more fuel for the fire. Lurax discovered that mixing snow with the fibrous algae creates a paste that can seal cracks in the igloo wall. We're stable for now. Vorik's scales fluttered in what might have been embarrassment. The training was meant to test cold weather equipment performance, not primitive survival techniques. Zeal, who had been listening nearby, chittered softly. Perhaps that was a failure of imagination in the curriculum. Commander, the mantis-like cadet had wrapped insulating fibers around his limbs and torso, a stark contrast to the sleek exosuit he had arrived in. Mallory has taught us more about actual survival in 6 hours than the Academy's technical manuals did in a full cycle. The igloo fell silent, except for the soft crackle of the fire. Commander Vorik closed his eyes briefly before responding. When equipment fails, adaptation becomes the only viable strategy. It appears the human cadet understood this principle better than our training protocols. The acknowledgement hung in the air, a moment of reversal that no one had anticipated at the beginning of the exercise. The primitive human, expected to struggle without technological assistance, had become the group's salvation. As the hours passed, Aaron organized the cadets into shifts, some resting while others maintained the fire or reinforced the expanding shelter. What had begun as a simple igloo had grown into an interconnected series of snow rooms, each serving a specific purpose: sleeping quarters, a central fire pit, even a small area for storing harvested ice moss and algae fibers. Cultural barriers that had seemed insurmountable at the academy dissolved under the pressure of shared survival. Lurax, whose crystalline biology made him particularly vulnerable to temperature fluctuations, taught the others how silicon-based life forms perceived heat and cold, not as comfort or discomfort, but as music, a symphony of molecular vibrations. This insight helped the group arrange the sleeping areas to better accommodate each species' needs. Karg, once her breathing stabilized in the warmer environment, revealed an unexpected talent for identifying subtle variations in ice composition. She could detect which snow blocks would be strongest for construction and which ice patches likely contained the valuable fibrous algae, simply by observing how light refracted through them. Even Zeal, who had been Aaron's most vocal critic, demonstrated remarkable adaptability. The mantis-like cadet's segmented limbs proved ideal for cutting precise snow blocks once he mastered the technique Aaron showed him. Together, they expanded the shelter to accommodate everyone in relative comfort. Commander Vorik, after recovering from his near-freezing, took on the role of timekeeper. Without functioning chronometers, he used an ancient reptilian meditation technique to track the passage of hours with surprising accuracy, ensuring the group would be ready for extraction at the appointed time. Throughout the long night, as Glacier 9's perpetual twilight darkened fractionally toward something resembling evening, Aaron found himself teaching skills that humans had known for millennia, but that had never been included in academy training. How to maintain body heat in extreme conditions, how to read the subtle signs of approaching weather changes, how to work with natural materials rather than attempting to overcome them with technology. Your species evolved on a world with extreme temperature variations, observed Lurax, during a quiet moment as several cadets slept. This gives you an instinctive understanding we lack. Aaron shook his head. Not instinctive, cultural. My grandparents insisted I learn what they called the old ways. I spent winters with them in Earth's northern territories, building shelters, tracking game, reading weather. I complained constantly, wanted to play with tech like other kids. He smiled at the memory. Never thought those lessons would matter in an interstellar academy. The academy values technological solutions because they are standardizable across species. Commander Vorik interjected, his voice low to avoid waking the sleepers. Your old ways are specific to human physiology and Earth environments. With respect, Commander, Aaron replied, the principles are universal, even if the applications differ. Working with an environment instead of against it. Simplicity over complexity when possible. Redundancy for crucial systems. He gestured to the multiple fire pits they now maintained. These aren't human concepts. They're survival concepts. Vorik was silent for a long moment, scales rippling thoughtfully. Perhaps, he finally acknowledged. The Academy's curriculum needs revision. Outside, the magnetic storm gradually began to subside as the extraction deadline approached. The cadets took turns watching through a small observation hole as the wild electromagnetic auroras faded and Glacier 9's normal twilight reasserted itself. The rescue shuttle arrived precisely at the appointed hour, settling onto the ice field in a cloud of disturbed snow. The extraction team emerged in full environmental gear, clearly expecting to find scattered, desperate cadets in failing exosuits. Instead, they discovered an elaborate snow compound with smoke rising steadily from ventilation holes. The lead rescuer, a senior academy instructor named Dr. Kelvin, stared in obvious confusion as cadets emerged from the snow structure, aliens and human alike, wrapped in improvised insulation, supporting each other, organized and calm. Commander Vorik, Dr. Kelvin called through his helmet speaker. Report status. Vorik straightened to attention, though the effect was somewhat undermined by the algae fibers wrapped around his torso. Training group intact. Doctor. Unexpected Class 4 magnetic storm disabled all powered equipment approximately 7 hours after deployment. The group adapted using alternative survival methodologies. Dr. Kelvin's gaze settled on Aaron, the only human among the cadets. Alternative methodologies, he repeated slowly. I see. The journey back to the Academy transport vessel was conducted in an atmosphere of subdued triumph. The cadets, stripped of their technological advantages and forced to rely on cooperation and adaptation, had not merely survived. They had thrived under conditions that should have overwhelmed them. In the transport's medical bay, technicians examined each cadet for signs of cold damage or environmental exposure. Aaron submitted to the scans with quiet patience, knowing that by standard metrics, he should have been in the worst condition. Instead, the medics found him to be in better health than many of his alien counterparts. Your core temperature never dropped below safe parameters, the medical officer noted with surprise, studying his readouts. Even without thermal regulation technology. Aaron nodded. The Igloo, fire, and proper insulation techniques maintained a sustainable microclimate. Using only natural materials found on Glacier 9, the officer added, clearly impressed. The Academy will want a full report. The debriefing session, held in the transport vessel's conference room as they returned to Academy headquarters, became an impromptu symposium on survival methodology. Each cadet contributed observations about what had worked, what had failed, and how their understanding of environmental adaptation had evolved during the crisis. Commander Vorik led the discussion with a humility that surprised many who knew his usual rigid adherence to Academy protocols. The exercise revealed critical vulnerabilities in our standard equipment, he acknowledged. More importantly, it demonstrated the value of methodologies we have historically categorized as primitive. The word hung in the air, its meaning transformed by recent experience. With the commander's permission, Aaron said, rising from his seat, I'd like to propose that primitive be stricken from Academy terminology when discussing survival techniques. There is only effective and ineffective. The origin or technological complexity of a method is irrelevant to its value. Murmurs of agreement rose from the assembled cadets. Even Dr. Kelvin, who had initially seemed skeptical, nodded thoughtfully. Furthermore, Aaron continued, I believe the Academy curriculum should incorporate cross-species environmental adaptation training. Each of our civilizations has developed unique approaches to survival that could benefit others. Lurax's understanding of molecular vibration patterns in ice, Karg's ability to assess material properties through light refraction. These skills proved as valuable as any technology. Commander Vorik's scales fluttered in what the cadets now recognized as his version of a smile. Cadet Mallory's recommendations will be included in my official report to Academy leadership, he announced, along with a commendation for his exemplary leadership during the crisis. The transport ship docked at Academy headquarters 3 days later. News of the Glacier 9 incident had preceded them, creating a minor sensation among the student body. The image of 12 cadets emerging from a hand-built snow complex, having survived a Class 4 magnetic storm without functioning technology, challenged fundamental assumptions about Academy training protocols. Within a week, Aaron found himself assigned to a curriculum development committee, working alongside senior instructors to create a new training module titled Environmental Adaptation and Cross-Species Survival Methodology. His experiences on Glacier 9 would become a case study, examined by future generations of cadets. Your name has entered Academy curriculum, Zeal told him during a rare moment of downtime between classes. The mantis-like cadet's mandibles clicked in what Aaron now recognized as amused respect. You are officially the primitive resilience case study. Aaron laughed. Could be worse titles. Indeed, Zeal agreed. The committee considered the Mallory Protocol, but thought it sounded too formal. Their conversation was interrupted by a notification on Aaron's Academy datapad. A message from Commander Vorik requested his presence at the Advanced Survival Training Facility immediately. Curious, Aaron made his excuses to Zeal and headed across the Academy campus. He found Vorik standing in the environmental simulation chamber, surrounded by a group of senior Academy officials. The chamber had been programmed to replicate Glacier 9's conditions, complete with swirling snow and howling winds, though without the deadly cold or magnetic disruptions. "Ah, Cadet Mallory," Vorik called, waving him over. "Perfect timing. We were just discussing the implementation of your survival methodology in standard training protocols." Aaron approached cautiously, suddenly aware that several members of the Academy's governing board were present, their insignia marking them as some of the highest-ranking officials in the interstellar education system. "Cadet," began Admiral Thrix, a gas giant native whose translucent body pulsed with complex thought patterns. "Commander Vorik has made a rather unorthodox proposal regarding future cold-weather survival training. Before we approve such a significant deviation from established protocols, we would appreciate hearing directly from the source." Aaron straightened, meeting the Admiral's gaze steadily. "What would you like to know, sir?" "Why it works," replied Admiral Thrix bluntly. "Our technological solutions are the product of centuries of scientific advancement. How can manual snow construction and fire starting possibly be superior?" Aaron considered his response carefully. "They're not superior, Admiral. They're complementary. Technology excels in predictable conditions with stable parameters. Manual techniques often prove more adaptable when conditions change unexpectedly." He gestured to the simulated storm around them. "Glacier 9 taught us that redundancy, having both options available, creates the highest probability of survival." Another board member, a silicon-based entity, similar to Lurax but far older. Its crystalline structure complex with age, vibrated in what might have been skepticism. The resources required to train thousands of cadets in these manual techniques would be substantial. Less than the resources lost when equipment fails and lives are endangered, Aaron countered respectfully. Additionally, the process builds qualities that benefit cadets regardless of technological availability. Adaptability, resource assessment, cooperative problem-solving. Commander Vorik stepped forward. "If I may, honored board members, the Glacier 9 incident revealed a blind spot in our training philosophy. We have prioritized technological solutions to such an extent that basic environmental adaptation has been categorized as obsolete. This creates a dangerous dependency." The board members exchanged glances, their various species expressing consideration in different ways: light patterns, chemical emissions, vibrational changes. Finally, Admiral Thrix pulsed decisively. "A pilot program, then. 1 academy cycle. Cadet Mallory will assist in curriculum development, and outcomes will be assessed against standard training metrics." The Admiral's translucent body swirled with complex patterns. "If successful, we will consider permanent implementation." The meeting concluded with administrative details, but the decision had been made. Aaron found himself suddenly responsible for translating generations of human survival knowledge into interspecies training protocols, a challenge he had never anticipated when he opted to face Glacier 9 without an exosuit. In the months that followed, Aaron divided his time between regular academy studies and the development of the new survival curriculum. He worked closely with Commander Vorik and a team of instructors, each contributing unique perspectives on environmental adaptation. The prototype course they created combined theoretical understanding with practical application, culminating in a multi-environment field test without technological assistance. Word of the program spread throughout the academy, attracting interest from cadets of species that had long relied exclusively on technological solutions for environmental challenges. Many were skeptical, but curiosity drove them to enroll when the pilot course was finally announced. On the first day of training, Aaron stood before a diverse group of 30 cadets, feeling a strange mixture of pride and nervousness. Among the familiar faces was Zeal, who had volunteered despite having already experienced the techniques firsthand on Glacier 9. "Why take the course when you already know the content?" Aaron had asked when he saw Zeal's name on the roster. The mantis-like cadet's mandibles had clicked thoughtfully. "Because I wish to understand the philosophy behind the techniques, not merely their application. There is something elegant about your approach that I believe has value beyond survival itself." Now, as Aaron prepared to begin the first lesson, he recognized the truth in Zeal's observation. This wasn't merely about teaching alternative survival methods. It was about challenging a mindset that had developed across interstellar society. The belief that advanced technology had rendered direct environmental engagement obsolete. "Welcome to Environmental Adaptation and Cross-Species Survival," Aaron began, looking around at the assembled cadets. "This course will challenge many of your assumptions about your relationship with your surroundings. It may occasionally be uncomfortable. It will certainly be unfamiliar." He smiled slightly. "But, by the end, you will possess capabilities that no equipment failure or technological disruption can take from you." As the academy cycle progressed, Aaron's pilot program produced remarkable results. Cadets who completed the course demonstrated significantly improved performance in crisis scenarios, regardless of whether technology was available to them. More importantly, they developed a fundamentally different relationship with their environments, seeing natural conditions as parameters to work within rather than obstacles to overcome. The final test came 6 months after the Glacier 9 incident, when a new group of cadets, including graduates of Aaron's pilot program, faced a similar cold weather survival exercise. This time, when the scheduled magnetic storm disabled their equipment, there was no panic. Instead, the cadets implemented the adaptation techniques they had learned, constructing effective shelters, managing resources, and supporting species with different environmental needs. The Academy Board, observing the exercise remotely, voted unanimously to incorporate the new methodology into standard training for all cadets. Aaron Mallory's name was formally added to the Academy curriculum as the originator of the Adaptive Environmental Response Protocol, a more dignified title than Primitive Resilience Case Study, though Zeal continued to use the latter in private conversation. 1 year after Glacier 9, Aaron received permission to return to Earth for a short leave. He traveled to the Northern Territories where his grandparents had first taught him the skills that had proven so unexpectedly valuable. Though they had passed away years earlier, he felt their presence as he knelt in a familiar snowfield, the cold seeping through his clothing, a sensation he now recognized as an ally rather than an enemy. The wind across the snow was gentler than Glacier 9's howling gales, but it carried the same message. Nature was not something to be conquered through technology, but a complex system to be understood and worked with. That understanding was humanity's unique gift to the interstellar community, a perspective shaped by millennia of direct environmental engagement that many advanced species had bypassed in their rapid technological development. Aaron gathered snow in his bare hands, feeling the cold burn against his skin before the heat of his body began to melt the crystals. Such a simple interaction, yet it contained the essence of what he had been trying to teach. The direct, unmediated experience of one's environment was irreplaceable. As twilight settled over the snowfield, Aaron began cutting blocks for an igloo, not from necessity this time, but as a form of meditation. Each precisely shaped piece locked into place with its neighbors, creating a structure far greater than the sum of its parts. Like the Academy itself, he reflected, where diverse species with unique strengths came together to create something none could achieve alone. Inside the completed snow dome, Aaron ignited a small fire, using the traditional lens method he had employed on Glacier 9. As the flames cast flickering shadows across the igloo's interior, he thought about the cadets he had trained, now spreading throughout the academy and beyond, carrying with them a philosophy of adaptation and environmental harmony that transcended technological dependence. Nature was no longer humanity's adversary in the interstellar community, but its interpreter, in teaching others to see their surroundings as Aaron did, as a system to be understood rather than an obstacle to be overcome. He had helped bridge a philosophical gap between Earth and the wider galactic society. The fire burned steadily in the center of the igloo, its heat reflecting from the curved snow walls to create a perfect microclimate. Outside, stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, the same stars that house the countless worlds of the Academy and its members. Aaron smiled as he fed another piece of fuel to the flames. Technology would always have its place in that vast interstellar society. But now, thanks to one cold day on Glacier 9, so would the ancient wisdom of working in harmony with one's environment. The universe was too diverse, too unpredictable for any single approach to ensure survival. It was in the balance, the integration of old knowledge and new discovery, that true resilience could be found. As the northern lights began their dance across the sky, visible through the igloo's ventilation hole, Aaron settled back against the snow wall. Tomorrow he would return to the academy, to his role as instructor and student. But tonight, in this simple shelter built by hand in the ancient way, he was exactly where he needed to be, a bridge between worlds, between past and future, between technology and tradition. The fire crackled softly, casting his shadow against the curved wall of ice. A single human figure that now represented something far greater than himself. The enduring value of simplicity amid complexity, of foundation beneath innovation, of wisdom passed down through generations proving its worth in the stars.